Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 28th episode of A QISSAA with Ishika, quintessential and inspiring stories of South Asian artists. My name is Ishika Muchal, and I'm coming to you from the unceded ancestral lands of the Gabrielino Tongva people, also known as Los Angeles, California. And I want to take a second to thank the California Arts Council Individual Artist Fellow grant for helping to fund this show. I am beyond thrilled to introduce to you my guest today, playwright Madhuri Shekar. She is the 2020 winner of the Lanford Wilson Playwriting Award, an alumnus of the Leela Acheson Wallace American Playwrights Program at Juilliard, and a fellow at New Dramatists. Madhuri holds a master's in dramatic writing from USC, as well as degrees from the London School of Economics and the Stella Maris College. Her Audible play, Evil Eye, won a 2020 Audie Award for Best Original Work, and she later adapted that play into a feature film for Amazon Prime and Blumhouse Productions. I've seen it. It's very good. Her numerous plays have been produced or developed at the Alliance Theater, Victory Gardens, California Shakespeare Theater, the Center Theater Group, East West Players, the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, the Kennedy Center, Hedgebrook Playwrights Festival, and the Old Globe, among many others. She co-created the web miniseries Titus and Dronicus, wrote for the TV show The Nevers on HBO Max, and is a writer on the upcoming Netflix sci-fi epic Three Body Problem. I am so honored to welcome Madhuri Shekar.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for being here.
I was just thinking, it's like you're showing my headshot, which was like 5 years ago before kids. And then I'm showing up. It's like that meme where it's like what you think you're getting versus what you get on Wish.
They're both amazing. I'm
It's
just honored.
fine though. We're all getting older. There's more
Yeah.
brothers.
It's part of life. Well, I want to start with the beginning of your journey and exposure to the arts. How were you introduced to the arts and specifically writing?
How I was introduced to the arts is a really lovely memory to share. My dad loves theater, and when we were living in San Jose, we would do plays with the local summer community. They would do like the summer mundrum,
Mm,
like cultural programs and things. So
yeah.
my dad would do plays with them, and so him and his friends would rehearse in our home, and I'm pretty sure that's where I got the bug.
Yeah.
They all just seemed like they were having so much fun,
Yeah.
and they would do comedies, Crazy Mohan comedies, and yeah, and Crazy Mohan is my dad's cousin actually. So there
Okay.
was somebody in my world where I could be like, what? That person is a professional screenwriter, playwright, comedy writer.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So that's my earliest memory. I was very, very young, and then
Mm,
they've always just been very, very supportive of my writing.
yeah.
So at some point, I love theater and I love writing, and I was like, how about I do a playwright
Right. Right.
thing, a choice.
Yeah. And
No,
is this what you started off in college with, or
Mhm.
did you gravitate? Okay, cool.
I went to college in India. So we moved to India when I was 9.
Mhm,
Um, and um, yeah, and I went to college. I went to Stella Maris
mhm.
in Chennai, and they did not have like a theater major, as we would
Got
call it
you.
here. But they did have a dramatics club, which I loved, and I
Mhm.
did everything in it, and it made me very happy. And yeah, that's kind of where I realized, oh, this is what makes me feel um, feel good and
Yeah,
feel like it feels purposeful.
right. That's beautiful. Can you talk about some of the early experiences, struggles of your journey as a writer?
Hmm. um, it's hard to separate generalized anxiety disorder from
Mhm,
my career. Um, but I mean, deciding to do an MFA was terrifying,
mm,
and as supportive as my parents were when I told them I want to get a second master's degree, and this time it's going to be in theater.
mm,
They were very concerned, obviously, and I basically was like, you know what? It's 3 years of my life. If it's a horrible mistake, I'm young enough to make a horrible mistake. Let me
mm,
make it, and then I will see what I will do next. And they were great, and they let me do it, and luckily it worked out for me. But it has been, yeah, a lot of years of deep insecurity,
mm.
anxiety, not really, just kind of blindly stumbling, from
Yeah,
place to place, from project to project. Um, but I've been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate in my career, and
yeah.
I have a feeling that all of the bad memories I have, I've buried them in a box
Mm.
that will erupt in later therapy session. So I don't, you know.
Love that.
Um, but yeah, I think the thing I feel very fortunate about is that theater has always given me community, and that's why I
Mm,
know that this is what is the path for me. So, from the beginning, with all of my struggles, it has always been with other people that I love and I trust, and um, yeah, yeah, and who are
yeah.
still in my life, from the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I mean, the I'm a theater kid, so I agree. The community that you get with theater is
Mhm.
just incomparable, really. So because you said that you kind of like things came to you and you stumbled upon them and working through that process, how has it been to develop your artistic voice and also trust your writing?
I think it's harder for me to trust my writing as I get older. I think
Mm,
that when I was young and brash and rode by the seat of my pants,
uh-huh.
stuff would happen.
Mm,
Things would come up that were brutally honest and raw,
yeah.
and I wasn't really thinking too much
Mm,
about. And I think as you get older and get seasoned and more experienced, and you hone your craft and you start navigating a career, politics, figuring out projects, who you want to work with, things like that, the left brain takes over a lot more.
yeah.
Right. So I actually think like my voice was bright and earnest when I was writing my first two plays, In Love and Warcraft and A Nice Indian Boy, both of
Mm,
which I could not write today, even if I tried. I wouldn't be
mm,
able to. I don't have that person inside me anymore.
mm.
Um, so I think I think I think my voice has always been there. In fact, now my challenge is how do I get back to that?
Got you.
How do I
Yeah,
get back to feeling? How do I get back to that um, unvarnished blah?
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
feel that so many times when I'm writing, like, when I look back at the stuff that I wrote when I was a kid, it feels so just like, this is coming from my heart and my mind, and it's on the page now. And now I'm like, I'm self-censoring
Hmm.
so much with this
Yeah.
pressure of, like, being good,
Yeah.
but what does that mean? That's so subjective, but yeah,
Hmm.
I absolutely feel that
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
process of like, ah, the more professional and seasoned you get, the more like I guess in your head you can
Mhm.
with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a struggle to recapture that
Right.
childhood joy and
Mhm.
that young adult brashness and that
Yeah.
sense of like emotional vulnerability that you might have like in your 20s even,
Yeah.
but that's also important for making something that can actually connect with people.
Yeah. Absolutely. So since you had exposure growing up in India and here, have you ever felt like a pressure to fit in within the stories that you write?
Um, no. Mostly I just look at what's out there and then I think what's not out there and then I try and write that.
Yeah.
If there's something that's already like made me feel very seen and heard and I'm happy,
Mhm.
it's there and
Yeah.
then I don't try and do it. So I think the worst thing you can do is try and fit in, right? I think the thing you have to do is be like, what what do I have to bring? What do I have to
Mm.
say that I seen, haven't experienced in my own life yet through storytelling, through media,
Yeah.
and can I put that out there into the world?
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm an Indian American playwright. I work in the U.S. Um, there's no slot for me. There's
Mhm.
no like it's just I write what I write and then it connects or it doesn't.
Got you.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, and I was gonna ask you this a little bit later, but I feel like this is a good transition into this. I think often as writers from underrepresented communities, we're pressured to write work that is about our people. And I remember reading one of your interviews, and you said that because you grew up in India and you had that exposure of living in a place where you didn't have to
I'm
represent.
not just like the majority culture. I'm like part
Right.
of the culture that's overrepresented in India. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And you don't have to deal with this pressure of like, I guess, honoring your culture or representing or being like the ambassador of your culture. And I think a lot of people here have grown, at least I have grown up, and I've spoken to a lot of people who have grown up with this idea that we have to represent our community. And I'm
Hmm.
wondering, did that
Who are we
come?
representing our community to, right? I care
Yeah,
about representing our community to our community. I don't care about
right.
representing it to anybody else. If
Mm,
we are representing our community to white people, I don't care. Like what? I don't care.
yeah,
I care about representing our community to our community. That's all I care about. You
yeah.
know, I want to talk to us, and everyone else is so welcome in the room. But I'm talking to a very specific person, very
Mhm,
specific audience. Um, yeah, and everyone else is welcome
mm,
because all of this stuff does become universal the more specific it is, right?
mhm, mhm,
Yeah. But yeah, it's a luxury. I never I got to grow up in the Bay Area. I lived for a few years in Singapore,
mhm,
where my experience as an Indian person was very different than my experience in the
mm,
Bay Area, and very different than when I got to Chennai, and I was just like, oh, this is where my family's from.
mhm.
I'm this feels very comfortable.
Right. Yeah.
It's just that living in different places just means I don't know. There's less. I feel like there's less to prove. Every
Mhm.
every single context is different. Um, which means the only thing that really matters is what you have to say specifically.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah,
kind of
no,
how I felt
definitely, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, like, you're writing because you want to write and not
it.
because you need to cater to someone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's a when you're writing theater, there's no money in catering to somebody else. Don't even bother. You know,
Yeah.
when you're writing for a living, then you have to start figuring out how to be a good employee. But
Mm.
not when you're making things that you're making because you have to make them.
Mhm. Yeah. I
Yeah.
I love that because it kind of, like, takes this. this burden off of you? Because I feel like a lot of times the idea, the pressure is very pigeonholy, you know, because like you're like, I can only do this type of role. I can only write this type of story for it to be important and digestible. But what you're saying is like it's so freeing in a way of I write because I want to write and
Yeah,
I invite people in, and if they want it, they want it. If they don't, they don't. You know,
yeah,
that's really nice.
yeah. I mean, it's hard not to want validation, right? It's
Sure,
hard not to want that attention.
of course.
Um, but it's something to, I don't know, it's just something to keep an eye out for. Like, why are you doing the work that you're doing?
Hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. So I from the plays that I've read of yours, they're so diverse in the worlds and the characters you build. They're also unique. Like, for example, you have gamer girls and you have PhD candidates and you have themes like sexuality, and then you also have the supernatural. So, what type of stories are you drawn to writing and why?
I like stories about women. That's usually my simplest answer.
Mhm.
And most of the time I just like writing stories about women, and women exist in all sorts of contexts.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I like characters where there's an inherent set of contradictions within them, and then I'm like, oh, interesting.
Mm.
Um, uh, for instance, one of the ideas I'm thinking about right now in terms of potential stories I want to tell is a story about Edith Wharton, who's one of my favorite writers. Age of
Mm.
Innocence is my favorite book of all time. And she was a woman full of contradictions,
Mm.
a brilliantly sensitive writer who uh, who was also a war journalist in World War One.
Oh wow.
Grew up in this like privileged Gilded Age family, divorced her husband, and
Mm.
became like this globe-trotting socialite. Um, could write so sensitively in terms of like women and gender and class and privilege and oppression, but she was also like a raging imperialist. Like
Mm.
there's all sorts of stuff to her. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I want to write about it because she's so like that you can't, so like I think that's the thing. Like uh, and Love and Warcraft is all about contradictions, right? A
Right.
girl who helps other people fix their relationships, but she's scared of intimacy in her own life.
Yeah.
A nice Indian boy was basically being like, okay, my parents keep telling me that a traditional marriage is the best one. What if I wanted to marry another woman? Would a traditional marriage still be the best thing?
Mm.
It's kind of like everything is contradictory.
Yeah.
That's what makes it interesting. So yeah, that's kind of what draws me into something.
Yeah, absolutely. And for example, in Love and Warcraft, because that's the play that I think I'm most familiar with of yours, because I've worked on that. Um, so I was reading in an interview of yours that you hadn't actually played World of Warcraft
Yeah.
before writing that. So for those types of shows that you create where you haven't directly experienced the world, how do you bring the nuances of that world and create like a full-fleshed landscape for those characters to live in?
The thing about research is that it's helpful, but the most important thing is creating emotional stakes in situations.
Mhm.
Once you create that, research, to be kind of crude, is a little bit like the wallpaper in a room.
Mm.
But if you like, everything else, right, is about like, so for instance, when I was writing in Love and Warcraft, I had this uh, wonderful friend who helped me out, Earl Balon, who is an actor and a recovering D&D addict.
Okay.
And so I just like took him out to coffee, and I was like, so okay, in this scene, Evie and Kitty need to have like a heartfelt reconciliation.
Mm.
Could they like sword fight while they do it? And because it just seemed funny to me, because
Yeah,
like, can I can I physicalize the emotional thing they're going through? And then
right.
Earl was like, okay, well, here's what can happen, and that can happen, and these game dynamics, etc., etc. But the only reason that scene works is because of the characters, right?
Mm.
So it's easy to kind of get lost in research, but actually, the thing I found is you build out the emotional storyline first, and then
Mm.
the research comes in after. My play Queen is about a statistician,
Mhm.
and I am have always been terrified of numbers. But basically, the thing is like two friends are looking at the same thing and they disagree,
Right.
right? Um, and I understand that in terms of art, right? So then when I was talking to scientists in my research for it, I'd be like, what would that be? Like if two scientists are looking at the same data set and they disagree,
Mm.
what's happening? And then they tell me, and then I write it down, and then
Yeah.
I forget it.
Yeah.
If you ask me what's going on in Queen right now, like I don't know. Like it's on the page. I forget,
Yeah.
I have the what's that thing? Short-term memory. So yeah.
Yeah.
So that's definitely, as long as the emotional context is working in a story, the research becomes, that's why the scene feels alive.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I love that, like, you're rooting the dramaturgy in a
Mhm,
character arc rather
mhm.
than rooting a character in a dramaturgy.
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
100%.
I love
Even if you start from like, I think the setting is really amazing.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, you still have to do like, okay, what's the character about? What's the character want, need, obstacles?
Yeah.
What action are they driving? All of that basic stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, House of Joy started with, I want to write something in this setting. This is awesome. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, I've read 17 books on Mughal harems. I
Yeah.
actually need to sit and figure out what she wants in the scene, which is
Right.
harder to do.
Yeah. And how is your writing process different when, say, well, I guess this is a two-part question, writing for stage versus screen, and then also writing when you're writing for yourself or when you're like collaborating with an entity for like a specific development process?
My preschooler is about to burst in. For TV and film,
Mhm.
it's just thinking a lot more in terms of product and creating a product. So writing outlines, getting the outlines approved, working very closely with producers on like delivering something that is not about me,
Mm.
that is about what is required, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with theater, I can do whatever I want. I can write
Mhm.
however I want. Thank you so much. I'm doing an interview. Do you want? It's watermelon water. Would you like some? Do you want to come say hi to people? This is Vikram.
Hi.
Vikram.
Hello. I like your
Vikram.
hat.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Sorry, this is going to be part of it.
It's life.
I had to work from home today, so
No worries at all. Yeah.
what was I talking about? Oh yeah, process.
Screen.
Yeah,
Screen
theater.
versus
I
stage,
can do
yeah.
whatever I like. I just start writing the pages
Mhm.
and then figure it out on the other side. Yeah, that's why it's watermelon water.
Yeah, and then so if you're writing for something that you're creating just independently versus if you're working with an entity that, like, there's, like, a specific development process that you're working towards, how
Yeah,
is that different?
I think craft is craft at the end of the day. And
Mhm,
like I was saying, like questions about character, they questions about character no matter what I'm writing.
mhm,
So much of screenwriting and TV writing I have discovered is just navigating, managing, and working with people. A lot
mhm,
more working with people and managing people's emotions than I expected. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's a whole other learning curve I had to go through. Sometimes in a film or TV meeting, I might be on a Zoom call with 5 different people, and then I have to learn how to identify whose opinion actually matters.
mm,
And it's not always like based on, you know,
yeah,
stuff like that I did. I had no idea, and I think that's one of the hardest parts of that is one of the hardest parts about being a writer in a collaborative medium.
Hmm.
Um, and in theater, I think it's a little easier because you are the authority and the voice as the playwright.
Hmm.
It's your work,
Right.
and it's just different in TV and film. You're an employee. You work for hire.
Yeah.
So you just go in with a different mindset. I'm very lucky that I have both careers to work in. So I have creative control,
Hmm.
um, and ownership with theater, and I have health insurance with film and TV. So very grateful for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The beautiful dichotomy and balance of this world
Yes.
in this
Yes.
industry. Yeah. So if you in the process when you get to choose, what do you look for in a collaborator?
Oh, and a collaborator. Um, like in theater for a director, directing is such a difficult job. Um, someone who's easy to talk to, someone who's easy to talk to, someone that I can be very honest and transparent with, and they're very honest and transparent with me. And then someone who's nice.
Mhm.
And then a director has a whole other range of responsibilities. So I really want someone who will be an amazing captain of a ship and take good care of the
Mhm.
actors, who are many times like the most vulnerable people in a creative um, context.
Yeah.
So that's very important to me in terms of like writing collaborators. I got to do my first musical collaboration a couple of years ago, and it was so fun.
Mhm.
And it was just it was with a composer lyricist team, Christian Magby and Christian Albright, and they were both just like sweet and lovely and funny, and we would zoom and we would toss around ideas, and it would be just great, and we
Yeah.
would be open to each other's, no ego,
Mhm.
just just fun, just joy. It's hard. Here's the thing, it's hard. I don't really have a checklist for
Mm.
collaborators.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get into metaphorical bed with somebody and then it doesn't work out, and then I'm like, okay, didn't work out. On to
Right.
the next. You know, that's the big thing about our careers, is that we get to make so many relationships with people from project
Mhm.
to project, and sometimes those people stick around for years and years in your life, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't, and it's fine.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's all good.
Yeah. I had just interviewed Arpita Mukherjee, who I
Yes,
think
who I
directed
was
one of your.
thinking about when I was thinking about great directors.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's sweet. Yeah,
yeah,
and, she was talking about how, like, there's, like, a feeling of chemistry, like, platonic creative chemistry
yeah,
when it just clicks well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Also, basically, if they can talk about my work in a way
Mhm.
that makes me go, "Oh, okay, they get it," or they see something that I didn't notice,
Mm.
that's important. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And when you're working with directors, are you generally, like, hands-on in the process of, like, working with the script with them, or do you finish the script, give it to them, and kinda it's like
If it's a world premiere, I'm like working very closely with them.
Mhm.
I mean, it changes so much in the rehearsals
Mhm.
for a world premiere. Um, yeah, so I also really would love for my directors to be very good at the kind of script analysis, dramaturgical side of things.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, in theater, everything is in flux until opening night,
Yeah.
and but even after that, like House of Joy had two productions, and then I totally rewrote it for the third production at St. Louis. So that's one thing I appreciate about theater. It doesn't matter. It can keep evolving.
Yeah.
Every new production is a new moment in time.
Yeah. I wanna go back to something you were talking about earlier about, like, the places that you've grown up in and experienced. How do you think those different cultures and parts of your travel identity, I guess you could say, have influenced your writing?
I don't know if anything is specifically influenced something. I just think it makes me. immediately, um, it makes me always interested in God. I don't know how to say this, but like, okay, so just for my experience, just in terms of my Indian identity, right? Very
Mm,
different in the Bay Area, very different in Singapore, very different
right.
in the Bay Area. My parents put me in a private school, and it was full of South Asian tech people who sent their kids to private school.
Yeah.
So my mom experienced a lot of racism when she immigrated there.
Mm,
I don't think I did. When we moved to Singapore, in India, like Tamil people, especially in Singapore, are descended from like indentured laborers back in the day.
mm,
Completely different cultural context, and like the racism I experienced in Singapore was like breathtaking,
mm,
shocking, and was not prepared for that. And then when we moved to Chennai, I'm like a, you know, part of a Brahmin family in Chennai. In It's like a completely different
mm,
context in terms of like privilege and experience and identity, right? So that alone makes me very suspect of anybody holding like a singular idea about anything.
mm,
It just makes me go, okay, that is true in one particular context. And are we talking about the context along with the thing you just said? And I
sure.
think that makes it really interesting for storytelling, right? It makes it very interesting for storytelling. I can't go in with a with a pre-formed idea about anything,
Right.
because my own experience has showed me that there is no single way to be and
Yeah.
have experience in the world. It's My experience in Singapore is very different than my experience in Chennai, and it is okay, and we need to talk about that.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of what I think about.
Yeah. I always feel like whether your identity as a person or as a like your voice as a creative is like identity is a process of defining yourself in context to the people and the place and the culture and everything
Yeah,
around you. So that
yeah,
makes a lot of sense. And I love what you were saying about like there is no one view, you know?
yeah.
It all depends on your perspective and the lens that you're looking at it from.
And it gives you so many more like stories. It gives you interesting stories to tell. In
Yeah.
Queen, about two best friends, one of whom is Indian American, one of Indian from India doing a PhD,
Right.
and her best friend is white, um, and a single mom.
Right.
And they have such intersectionality in terms of their
Mhm.
experiences. One person has like class privilege and financial privilege, but is also
Right.
on a conditional visa,
Right.
right? And is still a brown woman in a white majority society. Another one
Mhm.
is white but poor and a single mother, and like has a whole bunch of other
Right.
things stacked against her. So, that makes for an interesting, complicated relationship. And it was
Right.
funny to me when the play was getting produced that people were like, "Oh, I never considered that Sanam could be privileged." And to me, it's like, obviously she is.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously she is. Just because you're brown in America doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Literally doesn't mean anything. You have to see what's going on,
And
right?
it plays into, like, how they
Yeah,
approach the conflict in the play
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love the way that your mind is working. It's exciting to hear about. Um, how do you define and expand the definition of what is considered a South Asian story as a playwright?
Well, I mean, did a South Asian person write it? And does it have South Asian people in it?
Yeah.
I don't want to expand it.
Yeah. Okay. I love
I don't
that.
want to expand it. It's like it whatever. Is in Love
Mhm.
and Warcraft a South Asian play? I have no idea. I have no idea. I just kind of
Mhm.
said I wrote it, and I think a lot of Indian American girls identify with it, even though I didn't say Evie is Indian.
Right.
Um, and I remember one director was producing it, and he said, "Oh, Evie has to be a woman of color, otherwise the play totally falls apart." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't intend that." But he was talking about it as if I had intended it that way, and I was like, no, I never
Mm.
mentioned her race.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I don't
Hmm.
know. It's fine.
Yeah.
There's lots of us. We're making stuff. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Uh, so right now, I think in the industry is a time when finally we're having a lot of conversations about representation and leadership and art and like the diverse places that art comes from. Do you how do you feel about your role, or do you feel any pressure, or what type of experience have you had being a woman of color and being a playwright in this time in these conversations?
I don't know. Um, I just kind of do my work. I just kind of do my work, and
Yeah.
I want to help people. And if it happens to be, if there's another creative who happens to be South Asian like me, I will probably try and help them first, just because I think I might have
Yeah.
more contextual information to share with them.
Sure.
Um, I don't really see myself. I guess could you say the question again? I'm not sure. Yeah.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it was a bit of a mis discombobulated sentence. But what are some of the expectations and pressures that come with being a South Asian female playwright during a time when conversations about representation are finally beginning to happen?
Well, I don't know. I guess certain people feel good about themselves if they hire me. That's fine. You can
Yeah,
do that.
yeah,
I don't care. I'm just doing the work.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I care deeply about what I write about. Like so I mentioned that I
Mhm.
rewrote House of Joy entirely.
Right.
Between two, like I had its role premiere and I rewrote it because I kind of realized that I was I had unintentionally written a certain Islamophobic trope into my play.
Mm,
And honestly, I felt I mean, I couldn't believe it took me that long to notice, and it
mm,
took me that long for somebody to point it out to me, something very obvious. So
mm.
when I had that, oh my God, realization, I told my
Right.
agent, no more productions. I'm putting this play in a drawer until I can rewrite it.
Mm,
And thankfully, St. Louis rep, very generously, Hannah Sharif at St. Louis rep, the artistic director, was like, we really want to produce the play and we believe in you. If we commit to producing the play, will you do a rewrite? And
mm.
that's how I got to do a rewrite. And I took that trope out and I did something else. And so I that responsibility I feel. But
Yeah,
again, I'm representing my community to my community, right? I That is what I care about.
yeah,
Um, I am not too worried about everything else.
yeah,
I
yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That's lovely to hear, honestly. It's really,
Yeah.
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 Uh, so are there any particular changes within the industry that you would like to see?
God, so much. um, I'm extremely happy that the strike was successful. I believed deeply in everything we were doing as a guild.
Mhm,
There is a very good conversation going on right now about playwright compensation in theater that I think
mhm,
should continue to happen, and it shouldn't just be a conversation. It actually needs to happen. Um, Look, here's the thing. Uh, um, a lot of the changes actually need to happen at the level of the government. We need health insurance at the level of the government. We
mhm.
need social safety nets at the level of the government because that's what will allow people to become artists
Right.
without the privilege of coming from them. So uh, let's keep working towards that. I don't think art will change the world, but I think art will sustain us and keep
Mm,
us alive
yeah.
and give us time to change the world, is
Mm,
how I think of it. Um, yeah, there's so many things people could do. It just involves what are you willing to give up and sacrifice in order to make the playing field more equitable?
Mhm.
And honestly, it's like pulling teeth to get the people in power to do it, as demonstrated by the strike.
Yeah.
But I would love to see more of that done in theater as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, I
more
think
more collective action. Let's more collective action all across the board.
mhm,
Yeah,
absolutely. Grassroots activation in a way.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like we all have common interests. Let's just come
Yeah,
together and like make it happen.
absolutely. What advice would
You
you have
know.
for aspiring writers, specifically those of South Asian descent?
Um, um, Obviously, this life is very hard emotionally, um, financially, physically. The thing that makes it worth it are the friends you make along the way, as cliche as that sounds.
Mhm.
Um, I am so lucky to have my theater community. It's the best thing, and it's the best thing that's happened to me outside of like my actual family.
Mm.
My theater community. Um, and my best friend today is still my classmate in my MFA program who I met like on orientation day, and she's still my
No.
best friend,
Yeah.
close collaborator. Queen was inspired by our friendship, you know. So really, really, really invest in your peers is what I would say.
Mm.
Invest in your peers and keep creating. And I know that sounds so vague and scary, but I promise you that like it's gonna be so meaningful down the road.
Yeah.
Also, watch this documentary. Okay, because I recently saw Merrily We Roll Along on Broadway. It was beautiful. I loved it so much. And then I went home and I saw the documentary about the making of Merrily We Roll Along
Mm.
back in the 60s and the huge 70s and the huge flop that it was when it opened on Broadway.
Oh.
Watch that documentary. It is like the best documentary for every artist to see. It is about youth and failure and community. And when you see these actors, like 30 years down the line,
Yeah.
reflect on what happened back then. They thought they were going to get the biggest breaks of their career. They were starring in a new Sondheim musical, like right after he did Sweeney Todd. Like
Right.
this is going to be the best thing ever, and then they
Yeah.
flopped. Like
Mm.
imagine having your first professional gig be like the most public humiliating flop,
Yeah.
right? 30 years on, they're there. They're talking about their experiences. They're talking about their lives ever since then. And one wonderful thing one of the artists, former artists, says is she wishes that young people knew that whatever they're doing with their lives, they are building something. And when you're young, you don't realize that you're building it. But like every little choice that you make, you're building a sort of foundation for yourself,
Yeah.
whether you're aware of it or not. So just be aware of the foundation you're trying to build. And the best foundation to build is people and art, right?
Yeah.
Invest in people, invest in art. That foundation will really serve you. I wrote in Love and Warcraft and A Nice Indian Boy. I don't know what year it is. I wrote them over 10 years ago, and I
Mhm.
think it was going to be a movie this year. Like
Mhm.
it is like you just don't know what's going to happen. The people I made friends with years and years and years ago like are so important to me in my life right now,
Yeah.
and they will be going forward. And that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
watch the documentary.
yeah.
Must say, yeah,
This field is about people. I mean, I don't know
mm,
what we do art for if not for people.
yeah.
So that makes so much sense, and it's so beautiful
I
and
met my husband by doing a project.
huh?
I met my husband because we were, I mean, not met my, sorry, I didn't meet my husband. I decided to marry him because we were doing a web series together. And I was
Oh,
like, this guy's a fantastic co-producer. And he still is a fantastic co-producer of our life.
that's
So
so sweet. Oh my god.
if you all have any like aunties or moms in your life that are like, but what about getting married? Tell them, you know what, this career is going to help me get married. You just wait and see.
Period. I love that. That was probably the most writer romantic thing I've ever heard. The co-producing our life together. That was beautiful.
True, it's true. It's
Yeah.
true. We
So
still have spreadsheets.
yeah. So this show is called A QISSAA with Ishika, and QISSAA, it means episode. So I'm wondering, is there any really influential episode or story from your life that shaped you as a person or as an artist?
When I was 9 years old and living in Singapore, I decided that I hated living in Singapore. So I told my parents I'm going to go live with my pati tata in Chennai.
Mhm.
Bye. And I did. My parents let me, thankfully.
Uh-huh.
They thought I was going through some sort of weird phase.
Yeah.
But then 4 months later, I was enrolled in school. I was having a great time. My parents and my little brother were still in Singapore. And then they were like, oh, we gotta move to India. She's serious about this. So that is an actual thing that happened to me.
Yeah.
It just honestly, the narrative that sprung from that, like the way my parents would tell the story of like, oh, Madhuri, when she wants something, she's nothing's going to stop her. They'll say it in kind of a jokey way, but like, I'm so glad I got that was the narrative that they
Yeah.
attached to me. And then whenever things felt like they were getting hard, I would be like, yeah, I like left my family when I was 9 because I was like, I like this place better.
Yeah.
Bye. So you can do it. That's kind of that was my most influential episode of my life.
Yeah.
Um, and just the way my parents handled it the whole way through was just so commendable on their part. They
Yeah.
just let me go and they were supportive and then they were like, oh shit, we gotta follow her.
Yeah. She's not coming back.
Yeah,
Shoot.
she's not coming back.
No, I love that, and it's a testament to how much, the support from your family matters
Yeah,
in whatever you're doing, I think,
yeah,
especially in this field where you're, like, constantly facing rejection in one way or another, to have someone that believes in you and supports you,
yeah,
so important. Yeah.
yeah.
So, what are your upcoming or current projects that you can share?
Nice Indian Boy is gonna be at South by Southwest.
Okay,
Very exciting. Very exciting. I'm so thrilled with how the movie turned out. Um, what else can I share? Queen's having a production in the Bay Area at Theater Works Silicon Valley in March.
mhm.
I think that's about it. I'm just writing,
Cool.
publishing stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see what is next.
Thank you.
Um, what is next with the label by Madhuri Shekar. Yeah,
Oh,
and
Three Body Problem is coming out on Netflix, and I got to write for that TV show, so that was
okay.
really fun. So episode 4 you'll see written by Madhuri Shekar, although honestly it was rewritten heavily by the showrunners to great effect.
Yeah.
So they made it much better. But yeah, check out that show. I'm very very fond of the team that made it.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, anyone can watch that on streaming. It's
It's
releasing
on Netflix. It's gonna
soon?
be on Netflix
Okay.
in about a month or so. Yeah.
Okay, great. And where can people find your work? I mean, first of all, if you haven't read a play by Madhuri, I mean, what are you doing? But, if you
Yeah,
haven't
you can get a couple of my plays on Concord Theatrical.
okay.
And if you are a member of New Play Exchange, which you
Mhm.
should be, you can get my unpublished work. It's all up there. You can just read it. That's it.
Amazing.
That's it. I
Amazing.
should be better about having a newsletter or something, but one day I will.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanna really, really thank you for taking the time out
Well,
to
thank
talk to
you.
me.
Thank you for doing this. Like I said before we started, I think this is such a wonderful archiving project for where our community is right now, what
Mm,
we're doing, what we're feeling.
yeah.
I think it's such a great resource. When I was 22 and doing my day job, the playwright Adam Simkowitz had a blog
Mm,
called I Interview Playwrights. And every day at my day job, when I would just be feeling so sad,
mhm,
I would go to the blog and I would just read a new interview with a playwright that he had done,
mm.
and then I would print out interviews that I found very resonant, One of
Hmm.
them was by this young up and comer called Lin-Manuel Miranda. Um, but it's like resources like this, I
Yeah.
think, are super helpful for people who are starting out. Like you need
Right.
to see examples of people actually doing it and doing the work, and believe that it is a reality and can be a reality for you. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
so glad you're doing this. This is great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've done 28 episodes so far, and even if like the person that I'm interviewing is not in the same field as me, there's always so much to learn,
Oh yeah.
so much to learn, and just be inspired by the fact that all of you are doing this and
Yeah,
being
we're doing
invested. Yeah,
it.
you're doing the thing. Yeah,
We're doing the thing.
yeah,
We're doing the thing.
yeah. Yeah,
This is my kids' art, the art that
amazing.
they're putting out into the world.
Maybe a few years down the road, I'll be interviewing him.
Oh my God, he will give you the best answers ever. You just have
Amazing.
to show up like with a bag of gummy bears to like bribe him, and he will talk to you for hours. He'll give
Got
you
it, got it.
yeah.
Sounds good. Noted for future reference. Well, thank you so much again, and thank you so much to everyone who tuned in to watch. Even if you weren't able to watch live, you can watch this afterwards. And stay tuned for announcements about upcoming Kissa guests very soon. And thank you so much again, and have a great
Yeah.
rest of your Friday.
Thank you.